Hi, I'm Yadi and welcome to my channel. Today's video is in honor of Feeding Tube Awareness Week, which is February the 6th through the 10th this year. Today I'll be showing you how I set up my feeds in my backpack for when I have to leave the house, and I'll also be sharing my story about how I ended up with my GJ feeding tube, so stick around for that juicy tale. Hi again. So I wanted to talk you guys through how I set up my feeds for when I'm going out. So first I gotta shake the carton really well. And then I gotta put the formula inside of the bag that is hooked up to the giving set, which I will be putting inside the pump, and it's what runs my formula through into my tube. There's a lot of tubing and I gotta get it all unraveled. Give it an extra shake. Make sure it's all nice and stirred. And now I pour it into the little baggie. Gotta make sure to get every last little drop. Then I gotta put the water into the syringe for my flushes, which I do before and after every feed to make sure that my tube doesn't get clogged. So I put some water into the extension set so that when I'm pushing the in to flush it, I'm not pushing any air into my bowel, because that's painful and uncomfortable. Then I put a towel when I'm when I'm connecting the extension set, because sometimes when I open it up, I get a little bit of leakage. Now I'm gonna hook up the syringe and make sure I unclamp it so that the water actually goes through. And I usually only put like small amounts at a time, and then like I'll wait and do something else because I get like pain sometimes when I'm flushing. So now I'm gonna be putting the bag inside of the pump so that I can prime it. If you see the tubing, it's full of air right now. I have to prime it and make sure to get formula in there. So again, I'm not pushing air inside of my tube. I'm just setting up the camera. So now I'm going to turn it on. It's gonna make its little annoying beep noise. Let me make it here. Beep! I really hate that little beeping noise. And now I'm going to hit the prime button, which is what I'm going to use to prime the giving set with formula. And it takes a really long time, so I'm speeding through it a little because otherwise this would be like 3 minutes long. So it's running, 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 running still. Running, 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 and here I'm dancing to this song in my head, because that's how long it takes. It takes so long that I start thinking about songs in my head. Still running, 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 running. Like that Camila Cabello song. And it's almost done. So now I'm going to take it out of the pump because I'm going to switch everything over from the IV pool to my backpack that I use when I'm going to be going out. So I got to take the pump off of the pole. It has a little clamp thing that it uses to hold the pump. So I got to unscrew that. Make sure to turn it off, otherwise it'll beep at me. And now I'm gonna put it in my backpack. So first I put the bag in on the inside. Goes on the inside. And it has these little Velcro straps to hold it in place. This bag, I actually got it off of Etsy. It was modified to be able to use for like feeding tubes and stuff, and it came with the little Velcro and the holes inside to put like the giving set through and stuff. So I need to put that in through the hole and make sure it goes to the pocket that's on the outside of the backpack. That small little pocket is where my pump is gonna go. So I need to pull the giving set through there. See, I pulled it through the hole. And then I gotta pull the excess tubing through the other hole on the side of the backpack so that it's, out and I'm able to connect it to my tube. So there you can see I have the bag all set up and secured. Now I just gotta put the pump in and put in the little, make sure the giving set is inside. So now I'm just putting it in place. Gotta pull it tight and make sure it fits in there. And I set the pump back inside its little pocket. And I just make sure that all the tubing is, set in its place. It's not all like kinked up or whatever, because then the machine will beep. And then I'm putting in a little bit more water, because like I said, I gotta do it slow, like in small increments. And now now that everything's set up, I'm gonna turn on the pump. So another beep. And it's all set to the rate it's supposed to be, so it's all good. Gotta do that last bit of water. Clamp it so that the water doesn't come back up. And now I can finally get hooked up. Unclamp it so that the formula will go through and press the run button. Another beep. And then I set it back in. And make sure everything is all good to go. Everything's in place. Zip it up. My brother walked behind me. I told him I was filming, but I think he forgot. And now I gotta, wrap up the excess tubing so that it's not, dangling all over the place. It has a little Velcro strap for that too. And I'm done. Okay, so it's story time. I'll try not to ramble too much, but this is kind of a long story, and I even have notes because a lot of things happened and my memory is not that great, so I have my notes to refer to, so I'll know when things happen, what dates they happened. So essentially, I've always had, like as a kid, I had like stomach problems. Actually, like that got better, and as a teenager, I had some issues, but I went to like the doctors and they kind of just brushed me off, and that's kind of when um, my reluctance to see doctors began. Well, my reluctance to trust in doctors began because I realized way back then as a teenager that they're not, they're essentially not like what people believe them to be, which is like you go to a doctor and you have a problem and you tell them what's bothering you, like your symptoms, and then they say, oh, it's this, and then they give you medicine and it's all fixed. That's not really how it works. And in like my story, like you'll kind of hear about how basically America's healthcare system is very messed up, and it does not help out the people that need it the most, which is those of us with chronic illness. So my gastroparesis symptoms started more or less, like I said, in high school I had some issues, but I didn't really, since like the doctors kind of brushed it off, I didn't really like pursue it, just because it eventually like kind of got better. Like it would only happen like short periods of time and then it would get better, so I was like, okay, whatever. But it really got like actually like full-blown like gastroparesis symptoms in 2014 when I was in college. I started waking up in the mornings really nauseous, and I couldn't eat anything. I had like no like hunger whatsoever. I would try to eat and I would get like really nauseous and feel really full like really quickly. And that kind of just like went on and off during like my 3 years in college, where I would have these like, and they were essentially like flare-ups where I wouldn't really be able to eat much. Like I would only be able to eat small amounts, and I would even like lose weight because of how little I was able to eat. But then once like the flare-ups passed, I would be able to eat like more or less normally again. So then I would gain the weight back again. And because I didn't have insurance, like I said, I was in college, I said, I didn't really, even back then, I didn't really have much confidence in doctors, so I just didn't bother seeing one. After I got out of college and it was, you know, fast forward a couple of years, in 2017, my gastroparesis symptoms started getting really, really bad. Like I just, I wasn't able to eat much, and it got to the point where like I like woke up one day and I tried eating and I felt like the food was getting stuck in my like at the like in my throat, like at the base of my throat, and so like that was making it even harder to eat. So that's when I finally decided, okay, maybe this is, it was finally getting like super serious. I need to see a doctor, even though I didn't have insurance. So I saw a GI doctor. I had to pay out of pocket for it because, again, I don't have insurance, and told the doctor, you know, I had told him my symptoms. I told him, you know, this has been going on for a while. I get full really quickly. I feel like the food tries to come back up. I get really nauseous. I have stomach pain, and I feel like the food is getting stuck in my throat. And like, he told me that he wanted to do an endoscopy to see what was going on, but because I, you know, like I said, I didn't have insurance, I was gonna have to pay $3,000, I think, for the endoscopy. Because of the gastroparesis, like it got worse after I got out of college, so I wasn't able to like work, so I still didn't have insurance, and I was living with my parents, and you know, they didn't really have a lot of money to be like, you know, paying $3,000 for an endoscopy. So eventually, like, my parents decided to send me to Mexico. Like, my parents are Mexican, I was born here, but they're Mexican, and like, it's known that, like, you know, sometimes people from here go over there to see doctors or dentists and stuff because it's cheaper over there. So like, me and my mom, we went to Mexico, and I saw a GI doctor over there, and I was able to get an endoscopy. done over there for like the equivalent of like, I think it was like $50 or $60 here, which, you know, compared to like the $3,000 I would have had to pay here is like, you know, it's a big difference. So I saw the GI doctor over there. He did the endoscopy and he found that I had like, if any of you have ever had endoscopies done before, you know that you have to fast like before having that procedure done. So I was like, I had to fast like 12 hours or something before. And he did the endoscopy and it showed that like my stomach was filled with bile. Like he had to suction it out because it was like full of bile. And that's like the bile was backing up into my esophagus, and that's what was causing me to feel like that feeling, that sensation of having food stuck in the back of my throat. And so he found that in the endoscopy. He also found that like during that whole time when he was like in there with the scope and everything, that my stomach wasn't like moving. Like your stomach normally has these, it has does these muscle contractions called peristalsis, I think. And it's like your stomach kind of like, you know, makes these contractions to push your food through, like move it through your GI tract, and my stomach wasn't doing that. So he gave me like some medications for that. He told me essentially like, you know, there's something going on with your stomach, it's not moving. So he gave me some medicine for that, and it was like for motility meds, like to help your stomach move. And they did help. Like I was able to eat a little bit more with that. So like we ended up like, you know, coming back home because like my parents were like, well, you know, we figured out, you know, this can help you, and you know, just see a doctor over here and get them to give me the meds that the doctor over there gave me. But again, you know, the healthcare system is, you know, very whack here. And I ended up seeing, I found like the public hospital here, they have a program for people that people that are low income. So I started to see the doctors. It was November 2017. I saw the PCP at the hospital, and you know, I brought the like the results from the endoscopy and like all the, you know, like paperwork and stuff, like the findings that from the doctor in Mexico, and I showed them to her. And like she was like, okay, yeah, look them over. She said she was gonna send them to like GI so that I could get a referral to GI, and you know, like, you know, so I could see them and they could, you know, continue my care and whatnot. But they the like she sent over the records of like the tests and stuff, and GI denied the referral, so I wasn't able to see them. And she told me that she wasn't able to give me the medications from over there because they didn't have them here. So the medications ran out, and again I stopped like being able to, like, you know, eat very much because I needed those medications to help like with my motility so that I could eat. So I ended up like having to go back to Mexico. Like for a couple months I kind of was just like going back and forth between Mexico and here because, like I said, the doctors here weren't really doing much. Like they weren't helping me, they weren't giving me like any like treatment that would help. They just wanted to do a whole bunch of like tests that weren't really showing anything. And you know, meanwhile I was struggling more and more, like not being able to eat because, you know, I was losing weight. I wasn't able to eat enough to sustain my weight, so I kept losing weight, and you know, that's like dangerous. So after like a couple of months, it was like March 2018, I finally decided, you know, I'm tired of waiting for, you know, like to see the GI doctor. So like we asked, like, you know, a PCP, and they're like, well, you could try and get admitted, you know, go to the ER, try and get admitted, and then if you get admitted you can see the GI doctors in the hospital. So we're like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna try because I'm like starting to get like dangerously underweight, and I'm worried, my parents are worried, like I'm not able to get like sufficient nutrition. So I went to the ER and I was admitted, but not because of my GI stuff, because like I explained it to them. I was admitted because I had a CT scan done like a week before, and it had showed that I had a pericardial effusion, like fluid around my heart, so they were worried about that, which I thought was like funny because I was like, you know, haven't been able to really eat well in months, but you guys are, you know, I mean, obviously, like, you know, it could be serious, like the heart stuff, but they seem to really only like focus on that. And so, like, I was admitted, and so that they could monitor me and make sure, like, you know, I wouldn't have any like complications from that, from the fusion. And once I was like, you know, up in the hospital on the floor, the GI doctors finally came and saw me, and like, you know, they came in like several days asking me a whole bunch of questions until finally one of them was like, have you had a gastric emptying scan done? And I was like, no, I haven't. So finally, I left the hospital, and they had scheduled the gastric emptying scan for outpatient. So I went and did that, which is you eat like a plate of scrambled eggs with toast and like water. And because like I wasn't really able to eat much, like I told the person that was doing the test, like the radiologist or whatever, I was only able to eat like half of the eggs and then like 2 bites of toast. And then like they did the scans. I did the 4-hour test. Eventually, like I got the results like a couple of weeks later, and my doctor, my PCP, called me and she was like, yeah, it shows that you have like delayed gastric emptying. So after that, finally after that, the GI doctors agreed to see me, but it was like, I think it was like April, they gave me the appointment until July. Essentially, that was like from the first time I saw my PCP in November of 2017 all the way to July of 2018. It took like, you know, like 8 months or something to like, you know, actually get in to see them, to see the GI, which I find ridiculous because like I said, those during that time I just kept losing more and more weight to the point where like it was like really bad. Like I looked terrible. I looked like the living dead, and I was just so like extremely underweight, like very fatigued. Like I was honestly like super scared because I felt like this was serious. Like I was like, I feel like this is dangerous for me to, you know, not be able to get enough nutrition, for me to be losing all this weight, and for the doctors to not really try to do anything in all that time. It was just, it was very frustrating. It was later looking back on it that I realized that, you know, and also from hearing like stories from other people that doctors, they see someone like young, like at that time I was 24 years old, they see like a young female patient and they assume it's like, you know, oh, it's like an eating disorder, or it's all in her head, or, you know, they make these assumptions, and it's really hard to kind of like get them out of that mindset because they kind of see you, they assume, and then it's like, this is what it is, I said that's what it is, and I'm not going to, you know, come out of that. In July, I finally saw the GI doctors, and I remember being so frustrated because I was like telling them, you know, like I said, I was severely underweight. By that point, I was down to around like in like the 80-ish pounds range, like in that area, like I think like mid 80s or low 80s or something like that. And uh so I was like severely underweight, and they still like wanted to do more tests, and I was like, can you please, like, I was practically begging at that point for a feeding tube because I was like, I don't want to die, and I'm trying really hard, like I'm pushing myself so hard to try and eat as much as I can. I was trying really, really hard, and I was telling them, and they were just like, oh, you know, okay, we're gonna do some more tests, we're gonna do some blood tests, we're gonna do this and that, and then maybe we'll do the feeding tube. And at that point, you know, like me and my parents, we were just so frustrated. We were like, okay, I need like nutrition. I need to get, because it's dangerous for me to, like, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I can't keep like living off of like so little. I could only tolerate liquids. I had gone from doing like soft foods a few months ago to like just liquids. And it was just like very small amounts of like almond milk with some Ovaltine mixed in. That was all I could do in like a day. and it was like really hard for me to even get that much in because like I said, I would get like really full and it would try to come back up, and like the nausea, and like I was telling them and they were just like, okay, well, you have delayed gastric emptying, and like that combined with the endoscopy, they were like, I guess we'll say that you have gastroparesis, like very like reluctantly, like they were almost like angry at the fact that they were like disproven that, like I said, they had assumed, oh, it's just an eating disorder, but this shows that it's not. So my GI doctor in Mexico, because I had seen him, like I said, I was going back and forth between like here in Mexico, like I had taken like a copy of the report of the gastric emptying scan, and like he had already told me, he was like, okay, well, if you have delayed gastric emptying, that's gastroparesis. And like with him, we had been like trying different medications because over there they have more like medications available for gastroparesis, like for to help with your stomach emptying. But it was just like, it was at the point where like it got to a point where they just weren't helping. So like I saw like the GI doctors, they were kind of like more worried about like, oh, you have like gastroparesis, but we need to find out like what's causing it. And I was like, are we really at that point right now where we should be like looking at that? Like if you had if you hadn't denied the referral like months ago when the doctor had first sent it in and I had seen you guys, then yeah, I would be all for like, looking for what's causing it. But at this point, I was just like, literally, get me some nutrition, get me something so that I don't feel like crap all the time, so I don't feel like I can barely hold my body up. And I ended up talking to like a patient advocate at the hospital to see if they would like help us, like, because like I said, we were really frustrated at this point and we wanted to see like if there was a way to speed things up to, stop things from going like from bad to worse. And it just ended up screwing me over even more. Like it ended up with me essentially like, the doctor ended up feeling offended, and she used that as an excuse to like draw out the whole like feeding tube even more, like kept making excuses for not giving it to me. And eventually like I went to Mexico, and my GI over there, he was like, okay, I'll put in an NJ tube for you, because like I said, the doctors here, they were just taking too long to do anything. Like August 2018, I went to Mexico. My GI doctor was actually out of town when I went, so he had me see another doctor. So at a hospital, I ended up having to like be admitted because like I said, I was just like in a very critical state. I was severely underweight, and they put the feeding tube, the NJ tube in my nose, and it was really painful. Like he had a really hard time putting it in. And it was very traumatic for me. Like it really hurt, and by that time I was just like so sick of doctors that the whole experience was just super traumatic. I kind of freaked out afterwards because I was in a lot of pain and they wouldn't give me pain medication. But thankfully, like, I was in the hospital, I was able to like slowly start getting nutrition through the tube. And like they also gave me like IV, like vitamins through an IV to also, get more like, because like I said, I was like very like essentially like malnourished. Like I was in the hospital in Mexico for a week, and then thankfully I actually managed to get out like a week, like one day before my birthday, because it was like during my birthday week. I got out one day before my birthday, and we ended up staying in Mexico for like a month and a half while I like got myself to like a more stable place with like the feeding tube. Um, and it was definitely a learning curve, like having to figure out how to work the pump and everything over there. And like came home, I had to figure out how to work out like my infinity pump, because here they have like, the newer pumps, and I ended up getting an infinity pump off of eBay to like use here. So yeah, that's how I got my NJ tube, and like, it worked, it ended up working for me. You know, I finally had nutrition, and because it bypassed the stomach, you know, I was able to tolerate it, which was good. You know, I was finally, you know, starting to actually, you know, gain back some of the weight that I lost. Like, it was slow, but it was an improvement, you know. And so I'm really thankful that, you know, I had that doctor in Mexico who took me seriously, who, you know, was looking for ways to help me. I personally didn't have access to any other doctors. It was either see the doctors at this hospital that like were dismissive and like arrogant and didn't care, or like no, not see any doctors at all. Because if I tried to see any doctors, any other doctors here, I would have ended up like in debt. I wouldn't have been able to afford it. So for, you know, like 5 months I had the NJ tube, and like once I came back from Mexico, I saw the GIs here. I explained to them, look, I have this tube. This is what's finally working for me. Will you guys like manage my care? You know, like if I have issues with the tube or whatever. They're like, yeah, sure. You know, what's working out for you. You look great now that you're finally gaining weight. At least they had agreed, you know, to like, you know, manage my care with my tube or whatever. And so like, eventually they were like, you know, you can't have the nasal tube in for too long because you have a risk for like infections like in your nose or whatever. So they were like, we're gonna switch you to a surgical tube. And I was like, I was really scared because you know, I'd never had surgery before, and I like, you know, they're gonna cut me open, and it's not like it's a big incision or whatever, but I'm a little bit of like a scaredy cat when it comes to like medical procedures and stuff, which I get that it's ironic, you know, with like chronic illness, you're constantly having like, you know, tests and procedures and blah blah blah, but I don't know. And then I needed to have like, you know, the surgical tube, but I was like freaking out, and also because of my bad experience with the doctors here, I was also reluctant to like trust them. At the end of the day, you know, I didn't really, you know, have a choice. So I was like, okay, yeah, we'll do the surgical tube. So in January of 2019, I had my surgery for the surgical tube, and you know, surprise, surprise, they they messed it up. I was I still don't understand where the whole like miscommunication happened, but I could like feel it. I could feel like something bad was gonna happen, and I even called like because the radiology department, they were gonna be putting in the tube, the interventional radiology, and I called them and I was like, can you please make sure that they're putting in the right type of tube? I can't like if they put in a G tube, that's not gonna help me because I have gastroparesis, so I have issues with my stomach. Like, you know, that's not gonna help me. I have an NJ tube, so it needs to be like, you know, a J tube. And they were like, yeah, sure, you're fine. It's gonna be fine. And after I got out of this surgery, I asked them, I was like, because I heard them talking, and I was like, I'm pretty sure they put in a G tube, but I was like so paralyzed with fear when I was like just like, you know, laying on the table when they finished. I was like, you guys know it's supposed to be like a J tube, right? And they were like, no. And then like, so they had to like run around and like consult the doctors and blah blah blah. And then they were like, oh, you know, we're sorry, like, you know, we're just gonna keep your nasal tube in, and you know, you can use that because you're gonna have to wait 6 weeks to be able to convert, like, I think they were like gonna convert it to a GJ, but they were like, you're gonna have to wait 6 weeks for the stoma to heal. And I was like, seriously? I mean, it was I don't know, it was ridiculous. So I was admitted to the hospital, you know, because I had like the tube, and like I said, they had messed up, so they admitted me. And they, for the surgery, they had pulled my nasal tube, they had pulled it out of my jejunum and up into my stomach so that they could pump air into my stomach to like, you know, make the incision. And like the guy who pulled it out did it like really rough me and like scratched, like he peeled the inside of my nose, like he peeled it off, like the skin or whatever, and so it was really raw. So like I was asking the nurse, I was like, hey, can you guys like get me something like to numb it or something for the pain? It was like hurting really bad. And so she like talked to the doctors and they're like, oh, you know, since this tube is like so old, we'll just pull it out and we'll put in a new one once you get up to the floor. And I was like, I don't know, I was very reluctant because I don't know, I just didn't, like I said, I didn't trust them. They had already messed up, and so I was just like, okay, whatever. But then like once I got up there and they were like, okay, we're gonna put the tube in, like they were like, we're just gonna, you know, put it in, like, and I got like freaked out because like I said, it was like the original like insertion of the tube was really traumatic for me. It was really painful, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to like tolerate that, because like mentally, like it was like just the thought of having to go through that again, it was like freaking me out. So I was like, can you guys please give me like some pain medication or something for anxiety or something? Like I just can't, I can't do that again. And so like basically because I was like freaking out, they sent in like the psychiatrist, the psych team or whatever, to like evaluate me. And like, you know, my dad got really mad because he was like, you know, you guys really fucked up. Like first, like he explained to them, he was like, first you guys didn't want to give her the tube at all while she was dying. She had to go to Mexico to get it, and then she finally has nutrition, she's doing well, and you guys fucked for her. And like he got really mad and like went off on them. And so like finally like they realized, oh okay, you know, it was our bad, you know, yeah, we messed up. So they agreed to like switch out my G tubes that they had put in like mistakenly for the GJ tube. They were gonna do that, so I ended up having that done after like my 5th day in there in the hospital. And that one was done like via endoscopy. After they switched it out, I only stayed for one more night so they could make sure that everything was fine, and then I was released back home. And then I had, you know, my GJ. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was painful for like a while, you know, because like I said, they cut open, like they cut through your stomach muscles. It was hard for me. Like I was scared to like do much of any movement because I was like, it's gonna pull on there and it's gonna hurt. So I got my, you know, I got my tube, and I was like, I essentially had to learn, like relearn, like, well, I had to learn like how to take care of it, because obviously like with the nasal tube, like I didn't have to, all I had to do was like tape it down and make sure it wouldn't like, you know, get yanked out or whatever. With this one, I had to learn to like take care of the stoma and whatnot, and make sure like, you know, keep it clean and keep it, you know, free from like the leakage that it gets and stuff. I never really got like guidance for like how to, you know, manage a feeding tube. And I learned a lot like online, like on the forums and the support groups and stuff. The Olay Foundation also, they have a lot of like informative, you know, like things on their website. Like people, the ones that know the most are the people that actually use the tubes, you know, the ones that use them, you know, every day, because you know, we use them every day, so we have to be like innovative and come up with creative solutions to make our lives easier. Awesome that this community really like rallies together and like, you know, tries to find ways to, you know, make it easier for all of us to have to, you know, live life as a tubie. So I'm really thankful for that, and I'm thankful to be a part of this community. You know, it's not, I never wanted a feeding tube. It's not like, it's not an ideal thing. I mean, you know, those of us with chronic illness who have to get one, it's not like we just like, we're happy about it, or, you know, it's like, yay, feeding tube. Like, it's something that we use, it's necessary, you know, for us to survive. And, you know, we have to learn to live with it, you know, like accept it as part of our realities. And like, I hope I can help you guys. And also, you know, I'm also here if anybody ever wants to, you know, message me and you know, if you're feeling overwhelmed dealing with all of this, I want to be able to support you guys too. So while my tube has helped me a lot, it also hasn't been like a magic solution that has like made all my GI issues, you know, better. I've still had issues like with not tolerating certain formulas, or like not being able to do my flushes because of like I get pain when I do my flushes with water. And last year my health got really bad to the point where I just wasn't really tolerating my feeds anymore, and so I, you know, lost weight, and I'm kind of still like recovering from that. And also last fall I was diagnosed with MALS and I had surgery for that, so I will be, you know, continuing my story in another video next week for MALS Awareness Day, which is on February 17th. And, you know, because this video is already going to be so long, I'll kind of be continuing like my chronic illness story and how I got, you know, diagnosed with MALS and all of that stuff. So be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that video. And thank you so much for watching this, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next one. Bye!